and welcome here to TalkFCB, and welcome back to the channel here today, guys, where it is Monday, and we're coming into this off the back of a defeat. Now, I've got to be honest, I'd forgotten what this felt like, and I don't really want to feel it again. So what we're going to be talking about in today's video, guys, is how we move forward from this defeat, and that includes looking back at what went wrong against Real Sociedad. We're going to be looking at Hansi Flick's reaction to the game, looking at how it all played out, and where Barca really fell down on Sunday. We're also going to have a big discussion, and it needs to happen, on Frenkie de Jong, and we are going to have injury updates on Yamal, and now Lewandowski too, and it's the approach that Barca is taking, which interests me right now when it comes to injuries, guys. So lots coming up. I hope that you guys are doing all right. So come on, and let's do this. But I would like to begin, guys, with a very big thank you indeed for the super thanks donations coming in. Matthew, very, very big supporter on the channel here, says something was off last night about Barca, particularly they're looking at the decision-making. Players were hesitant on the ball and to shoot or even play the right pass there. And I would definitely agree with that point of view. And I would also just like to wish a very happy birthday to Verla Louise, who was actually the one here who got his brother into supporting Barca, and he's also a big fan of the channel there. So very happy birthday to you, and sorry that you were not able to celebrate a better result. But let's start by talking about Hansi Flick's reaction to the game yesterday, because honestly, looking at Flick on the touchline, it's more animated than I've ever seen him as the Barca coach so far, more frustrated and angry than I'd ever seen him. And I've got to be honest, as that game went on from Barca, I think for the first time as a team out there, the players out there, a little bit of panic set in. That's the first time that we'd seen it this season. The reason that I say that is we started seeing different patterns of play. You know, looking at the end of that game there, it started to become a bit desperate. You know, very, very disjointed plays. You know, we saw lots of sideways passing. You know, we hadn't seen that all season long. You know, some of the things that we saw yesterday, it's not really Flick's Barca. It's not what we've been seeing. We saw lots of passes there go out wide and crosses being looped in, you know, reluctance to take on shots as well. That's what I saw in the final stages of the game. And that is not what we want to be seeing. And I think Flick will be very, very keen here to just get the message now across to his players that, okay, that's not what we were doing. You know, that's not the path that we've been on at all. If anything, that's what we've been all trying to get away from. We don't want to fall back into those bad habits. And I think under Hansi Flick, there is no danger of that, because the man that I saw after the game there facing the media speaking about the defeat, he did not look panicked himself, and it was very important again that even despite this game, even despite the refereeing performance that we saw, the disallowed goal, which we have to keep saying is a disgrace, it's an absolute joke that goal was disallowed, but even despite all of that, he still did not want to make excuses. He said, all that I told the ref was that it was a goal, that they'd made the wrong decision, it is not offside. Flick said that was very, very clear to all of us, but he said, we've got to accept it, and we cannot make excuses about this because we did not create the chances that we usually do. So Flick openly saying there, look, it's a horrific decision, but that also cannot fully explain the performance that we saw from the team, what we were doing, what we were able to control ourselves. And on the absence there of Lamine Yamal, he said, did we miss Yamal today? He said that would be the easy answer to give, to say, oh, we only lost because Yamal wasn't there. He said, of course, every team in the world would miss a player of his quality, but again, he's reinforcing the fact, no, today was not our day. We made the wrong decisions in this game. So there's no feeling here that Flick is just going to blame the referee. He's just going to blame Yamal's absence and say, oh, well, don't worry about the game. Don't worry about that performance. We don't need to correct anything because we didn't do anything wrong. There's no sense of that at all here. I sensed a man who was a bit frustrated, a bit unhappy with the way that his players played, and I think especially the way they sort of abandoned the game style. You know, we didn't see the same energy, the same pressing. Now, that may come down to the fixture list. You know, these players are not robots. They cannot necessarily sprint every single minute, every single game, but that's why we've got to use the squad. That's why we have to make sure that we're rotating at the right time and making sure that we're able to play in the same way when we do that. But there is just one observation that I would like to make when it comes to Hansi Flick, and especially here with emphasis on on him being new to this league. You know, you have to remember, he has never coached in La Liga before. He has not experienced any of these games. Many of these opponents here, he's facing them for the first time. And I think if we look at the way that he's really prioritised the Champions League, that's the way that it seems to me here. Looking at the games we've seen at Barca so far, and maybe it was especially after losing that first game against Monaco, but the emphasis on the Champions League has been much, much more than La Liga. And let me just explain what I mean here, because of course, remember that away at Osasuna, we heavily rotated the team, and I'm talking about a lot of changes there. Away at a very difficult stadium, we went on to lose that game. But then we played one of our strongest teams at home against young boys in the Champions League. And it was interesting to see a similar sort of pattern in terms of playing your best team, your absolute best lineup against Red Star in the Champions League, pretty much. And then against Real Sociedad, was there tiredness there? You know, we had the injury to Lamine Yamal. Were we not fully prepared? Were we not fully rested for a game? Again, the away is so difficult, because I think you could argue there on paper, playing young boys, playing Red Star, they are probably easier games, even if they're in the Champions League, they are easier games on paper than Osasuna and Real Sociedad away. But like I say, there's been a real emphasis on Flick in getting those Champions League points, making sure that we make no mistakes at all in that competition. Because, hey, let's face it, guys, if he was to drop points in any of those games against young boys, against Red Star, if we heavily rotated and then it all backfired on us, well, then there would be a big storm as well. So I understand here, it's tricky. It's not easy to make those right calls and actually foresee which games are going to be the trickier ones. But I also think here, he is still going to be learning about the threat that teams like Osasuna pose, that teams like Real Sociedad can bring to Barca, even if they are mid-table. You know, coming into this game, Real Sociedad have not been having a good season. They are still capable of playing fantastic football, because that's what they did yesterday. As much as Barca were not good, Real Sociedad were outstanding. This league is not easy, and that is why you can't just turn up. You know, if you're the Barcelona team out there last night, you were not able to compete. You were not able to stay with Real Sociedad. You've got to be there. Nothing will be handed to you. You must be ready. But okay, guys, then we must move on to talk about the players themselves there, the influence that they have or didn't have in yesterday's game. Because let me just start by saying that I don't really think any player out there yesterday covered themselves in glory. I don't think here that any player really showed the kind of level that we've seen in the previous weeks. But my question would be, not only looking at this Real Sociedad game, but actually looking here at the past performances. Against Espanyol, second half, of course, wasn't too good. Even against Red Star, there was a few nervy moments in the game. You know, it wasn't absolutely scintillating stuff from Barca. And now the defeat against Real Sociedad. What has been going wrong? To see our performances here just go on a bit of a downward trajectory. And for that, well, we have to talk about Frenkie de Jong. Because let's be perfectly honest with you here, guys. In my opinion, since we've disrupted the midfield at Barca, we haven't quite been the same. Ever since we sort of strayed away from that Casado-Pedri double pivot, we've not quite worked with the same efficiency in midfield. We haven't quite been able to play the same kind of football. And is Frenkie de Jong being included again, time after time now, in our midfield? Is it helping our performances? Is he adding to our team? Has he made us better than what we saw before? Yes or no? Yes or no there? That is the question that I want to know from you, because he wasn't injured. Let me just say that. In yesterday's game against Real Sociedad, there was a concern that maybe he was carrying an injury right the way through that first half. Maybe that's why, as the game went on, he really didn't seem to be moving well or playing well at all. But now, he is all fine to join up with the Netherlands squad there. So Frenkie de Jong is not injured. I'm interested to see how much Ronald Koeman plays him and exactly how he looks in his midfield. That's going to be very, very interesting indeed. But in my opinion, guys, Frenkie de Jong, it's very, very simple. Is he defensively better? Does he bring more to a game than Marc Casado does? The answer is no. And then on the other side of that then, okay, does he bring more offensively than Pedri does then? From that deeper midfield role? The answer is also no. So the question is, if you're not better defensively than Casado, and you're not better going forward than Pedri, then what can you do? What can you bring to this starting lineup that takes us to another level then? What can you do that gives us more than what those players do combined? And I just don't think it is there right now. And I don't mean to gang up on him, you know, I'm not saying everything is all Frenkie de Jong's fault. And I'm also not saying that he's a bad player, because we've seen him put in good performances. We've seen good moments from him. People will talk about the game against Real Madrid. He came off the bench in that game. Off the bench, though. He wasn't starting, and he had a really good impact on the game. But again, we're already talking now about something that happened 4 games ago. You know, since then we've had a really poor performance from him against Espanyol. He started against Red Star, and I don't really think it was that great in midfield then. And against Real Sociedad, really, as that game went on in the first half, I didn't really notice he was on the field. And my biggest problem with him is not his own performance, it's what he does to the rest of the team. It's what his inclusion there at the base of that midfield, it does to the rest of the team, because it slows everybody down. We don't want anybody in this team, whether it's Frenkie, whether it's any other player, to slow the pace of this team. That's what Hansi Flick's Barca is all about. Pace and pressing. You combine those two characteristics there, and you have a team that is tough to live with. Frenkie slows things down, especially there, looking at counter-attacking moves. He takes far too many touches, and it's just a completely different looking midfield. And it's not just about him, it's also about there pushing Pedri into an advanced position. We're almost trying to cram those 3 players in there. It doesn't really seem to be working. And again, I'm not ganging up on him here. I'm not saying that, oh, he's responsible for everything. And I'm not even saying here that Frenkie has no part to play in this Hansi Flick team. I'm not saying here that he's got nothing that he can offer. You know, there's characteristics that we can certainly use in our team. But all I'm saying is it in the starting lineup? And is it being almost an undisputed starter again at the base of our midfield, pushing Pedri into a more advanced role there, making Marc Casado play with a different kind of player in midfield, especially when everything was working absolutely perfectly before? So all that I am saying here on Frenkie de Jong here, the definitive line that I would give on him is, since he has been included again in the starting lineups of our midfield, have we improved? Have our performances got better, or have they got worse? Have we looked as quick, as electric going forward, as devastating on the counter-attack? We haven't. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind here that over the past 2 games, our performances have regressed. There's probably several reasons for that, not just Frenkie, but he may be one of them, and we have to address that. We have to talk about it openly. But of course, guys, like I say, it is not just only about Frenkie. We cannot also ignore here that we were missing a player last night in Lamine Yamal, who has been absolutely unstoppable for us this season, and his importance in this team, it is enormous right now. I mean, the amount that we're already relying on a 17-year-old, I guess in some ways it's scary, but I guess in other ways it tells you how good he is and how much ability is in his game and what he can bring to this entire team. Now, Barca this morning have confirmed that he has a grade 1 ankle sprain and that Yamal will be out there for between 2 to 3 weeks of action. And after the game there, Flick actually said he didn't know if he'd be back after the international break, that he wasn't really sure about the exact timeline there on Yamal's ankle problem, but I think it's interesting, and I think I wouldn't rule out him missing the international break here with Spain. Of course, he missed the game against Sociedad, which wasn't ideal, but then following the international break, would anybody be that surprised if he was ready to go again? Do we think that maybe 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks is the more likely option with Yamal right now? Because can I also just point you here to Robert Lewandowski, who Barca also confirmed this morning had suffered a lower back injury. He will be out of action for approximately 10 days. Well, that's interesting too, because again, at the end of the international break, well, Robert Lewandowski, he's going to be absolutely fine, fit and ready to go. And it's interesting that he used the back injury there, because Lewandowski, every game, he gets kneed in the back. You know, he gets really big hits there to his back. So you know what? I could definitely believe that he has a back injury, guys. You know, he does. He definitely does. Don't say they haven't made it up. Why would they make up an injury? He definitely does. He has a back injury, okay? But this is where it gets interesting with Barca right now, because I am just actually wondering, are they starting to prioritise the club here, ourselves? You know, we said before, Barca paid the players, Barca here are in control of the players, and at some point, you know, especially when you're talking about 3 successive international breaks, September, October, November, something's got to give. You know, the players have got to get a bit of rest at some point, And what better way here than just saying, look, this 2-week period, right before some more important games in November and December, yeah, this is the moment to take care of ourselves. And that may be happening here in the case of Lewandowski, and maybe Yamal might be ready once the international break is over, guys. But the most important thing is that we find a way to bounce back. And I believe that we will. I think Flick here will make sure the players can show a response and that we will get back to what we were doing. But do let me know on that Frenkie de Jong debate. I want to know what your thoughts are there on that midfield setup, how it's been impacted there since his return to the team, and what should the team look like here after the international break is over? What is the best team moving forward for Flick's Barca? Please do let me know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. We are going to have plenty more videos coming up here on the channel, and we're also going to have more podcast episodes incoming over on MORETALKFCB. I will see you soon, guys, for all of that good stuff. Thank you indeed for your support, but until next time, as always, Vejka, Real Barça.